there's kind of this emergence in the world of financial services around the reality that money isn't just logical. It's not just rational.
Yeah.
It's not just something that you can put on a spreadsheet and that factors in everything that goes into money and financial decisions. There's sort of been this like widespread embrace of the idea that money's also emotional and it's psychological and there's a behavioral element and component to it. And until you can recognize that or until you embrace that, you'll
Right.
never really fully control your financial success. Like it's just not enough to put things on a spreadsheet and let that spreadsheet create the success that you want. There's things that get in the way. There's experiences from your past that can prevent you from getting to where you want to go. It's not just as simple as saying, oh, here, if I want to go from A to B, all I need to do is accomplish these three things and I'll get there, because we all know it's not about knowing what to do. It's about actually changing your behavior to be able to do it. And so we're in the industry, we're kind of on the forefront. The reason why you've never heard of this role is because it's kind of been a movement lately, and we're pioneering the role where we're saying, hey, we want to do our best to spread this message, to get it out there, to create awareness, to let people know that there is this whole other realm of the money dynamic, the whole other realm of finances and money outside of what's logical and rational. And that's on the behavioral, the emotional, and the psychological side.
Well, welcome everybody back to the Growing Money with Sean Trace podcast. I've got an awesome guest with me today. Would you like to tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Ooh, man. Sure, of course. And who says no to that, by the way? Like, would you like to talk about yourself for a little bit? And it's like, well, yeah, I hope people are interested. So, okay. So I'm Brendan Frazier. I'm Chief Behavioral Officer at RFG Advisory. So most people, when they hear that, my friends included, the first response, the first reaction is always like, what is that? What do you mean? What do you do? Never heard of that before? Which is true. No, most people haven't really heard of that before. It's not like a common position that exists. So first, RFG Advisory is it's an RIA. It's a financial advisory firm. We have advisors that work on our platform around the country. What does a chief behavioral officer do? Well, there's kind of this emergence in the world of financial services around the reality that money isn't just logical. It's not just rational. It's not just something that you can put on a spreadsheet and that factors in everything that goes into money and financial decisions. There's sort of been this like widespread embrace of the idea that money's also emotional and it's psychological and there's a behavioral element and component to it. And until you can recognize that or until you embrace that, you'll never really fully control your financial success. Like it's just not enough to put things on a spreadsheet and let that spreadsheet create the success that you want. There's things that get in the way. There's experiences from your past that can prevent you from getting to where you want to go. It's not just as simple as saying, oh, here, if I want to go from A to B, all I need to do is accomplish these three things and I'll get there, because we all know it's not about knowing what to do. It's about actually changing your behavior to be able to do it. And so we're in the industry, we're kind of on the forefront. The reason why you've never heard of this role is because it's kind of been a movement lately, and we're pioneering the role where we're saying, hey, we want to do our best to spread this message, to get it out there, to create awareness, to let people know that there is this whole other realm of the money dynamic, the whole other realm of finances and money outside of what's logical and rational. And that's on the behavioral, the emotional, and the psychological side. So I do a lot of content, put a lot of work out around helping people better understand exactly what that means. Because even just describing it here, right? It's like, okay, like I kind of get it, but what does that mean? What are examples of it? So I'm doing my best to kind of spread that message, get the word out, let people know, not just that it exists, but help them create awareness around when it's happening, where it's happening, how it shows up. And then maybe most importantly, it's not just leaving them hanging, teaching them how to recognize it, but saying, hey, what do we do with this? How do you go about handling it? How do you take what you now know and use it to improve your financial success? So it's not just having the best portfolio. It's not just saving what you need to save, but it's pairing that with what I call the human side. Yes. And when you compare those things together, that's where the best outcomes actually happen.
I love that. And it's like one of the things is we live in a world, and we humans have this idea. So many modern people have this idea that we are so far removed from our animal ancestors that we are just like, we have this massive distance between us. But you think about it, like, why do we have a fear of the dark? Why is there? Because, not very long ago, we lived in places where the most dangerous time of day was the night, and you didn't journey alone away from the pack. It's why, like, God, what was it? It Part 2, when they go into the dark basement, and you're just like, no. No, 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 no. Like, no, no. And I remember we had a basement when I was a kid. And Jesus, that place, that was just scary as hell. Rickety old wood stairs. And I mean, I think I had seen like one of the old school horror movies in the 80s, that was just the really good ones, blood and gore and all that. And we moved in this nice house, and my dad was like, "And look, it's got a basement." I was like, "Oh hell no! I'm not going down to that basement. It's just not happening." And my dad's like, "It's so cool." And actually, it was cool, and they renovated it and turned it into a really cool space. But they had to renovate it. They had to go in there and clean it out. They had to look at this place that wasn't great. And what did they do? First of all, they analyzed the space. They look how big it was. They carpeted it, they put insulation up, they put lights up. And it's interesting because when we all have these psychological places that we are not fully aware of. I started working myself with a certified financial planner. We're just getting going. And in one of our last our sit downs, I talked to him about stuff that was terrifying to me that I'd never talked to anyone about financially, like thoughts and things like that. And it was crazy because afterwards he was like, "You know what, Sean? I see that, it's a lot of moving pieces, but we're going to get you out of this. It's going to be okay." And I was just like, "Oh, wow." It's amazing. Wow. It's going to be okay. Yeah. That's awesome. And it was like, what I felt like at that moment was, I remember when I was a kid and I was looking down into that basement, and my dad came in and he's like, he had a flashlight. He shone it down there, and he walked me down and he turned on the lights. And when I got into that basement and the lights were on and my dad shining that light around the room, suddenly it wasn't so scary. Didn't want to go down there by myself again, but that's every time he walked me down there. And when the guys were doing construction, it got kind of cool. And then eventually what happened was that got turned into, like, my dad put a giant train set down there, like old school train engine. It was a cool train set. And I got to go down there and play with this electrical train all the time. But it was a series of steps that were taken to help me get past that. So let me ask you this. Why do smart, successful people still make these emotional, irrational money decisions? What's that all about, man?
Yeah, I mean, you already hit on it. Yeah, I think you already nailed it, which is we tend to dismiss, or maybe we don't dismiss it, but I don't think we put enough focus on, we don't appreciate enough our past and our ancestry and where we've been. And so you think back, and our brains, where these decisions are made, by the way, our brains from the very beginning, they've had one primary function. We go back to, let's say you go back to the caveman days where you're living on the Sahara, and you've got the hunting and gathering society, and you've got a few friends around. Like, that life was much different than the life that we live now. Their okay, so that's an obvious statement, so we'll go there. But the sole focus at that time, the sole priority was survival. In other words, it was not something that you wouldn't wake up every day going, "Oh, I'm going to live to see another day." It's like, I need to survive to live the next day. So the brain's been programmed over time to where its sole purpose is survival. I need to survive to see the next day. Now, the good news is that because it did that, that's why you and I are here right now having the conversation, because enough people survived that here we are, and we're alive, right? The problem with that is that it programmed our brains to focus on, to be wired for survival. So here's an example of how that plays out, how it played out back then, and then how that translates to today, which answers your question around why even smart people have struggled with this. Because, and I'll get to that in a second. So let me say this first. So you think about back in the day with our ancestors, like we said, you're in this society, hunters and gatherers. You're out in the Sahara, you're sleeping, you don't have a house, right? Best case scenario, you found a safe place somewhere, maybe under a tree in a bush, you got some covers over you, but you're sleeping and you hear a little rustling in the bush. Like a little ways over, you hear, right, exactly. You hear a little rustling over there. You have no idea what it is, right? It could be one of your friends or family members. It could be a tiny animal that's not a threat, but you can't take the risk. And so in that moment, your brain goes, okay, I need to be aware. I'm here to survive. And so it goes to this state of like, I need to do something. I need to move. I need to protect myself. Right. And so our brain's wired that way. So now you fast forward to today. When we think about smart people that don't make great financial decisions, there's a lot of them. Like smart people, nobody's immune to this because this happens not in our like conscious thought. Oftentimes it's in the subconscious part of our brain where we're not even aware that it's guiding our decisions. But you fast forward to today. Think about that feeling that you got when you're laying down. There's a little rustling in the bushes over there, and you go, I need to do something. Fear, you're overtaken by fear. It's like the blood flows to the part of the brain that's like, hey, move, go, act, do.
Right.
So now, today's day and age, you open up your phone, you turn on your TV, and you see this headline that says, market has worst day in history. Dow drops this many points, marking worst day this year. Or
AI is going to replace every last job ever in 5 years. And you're like,
yeah, you will no longer have any income because your job will be taken by AI. Or like the most recent one that had a big impact was like tariffs, right? So with tariffs, what's going to happen to the economy? Is it possible they could even survive with these tariff rates? But pick whatever it is. Those headlines, first of all, the people that write those, that put those out there, they're already aware of this, the way we've been wired, our evolutionary psychology. They know this. So that's why they're putting these headlines out there, because they know it captures your attention. But what it does is it's the equivalent of hearing the rustling in the bush where you go, oh, shoot, I feel threatened. And then the blood rushes to that part of the brain. You feel threatened. And so you go, I need to do something. I need to act. And if you're invested, you go, I need to get out of this because there's no way that the market's going to survive. So you sell out. And that gets into some of the rules around successful investing. But by and large, what we've seen over time is the best way to grow wealth is to stay the course, stay invested. And so if you're disrupting that, that's one way to erode your wealth or to not grow it at the same rate. And so we see people all the time that make these fear-based decisions. And let me say this, I don't judge anybody that does, because we know it's not something that you're consciously thinking. It's just this it's this instinct that's been wired into our brains, right? And so it doesn't matter how smart you are, doesn't matter how not smart you are, right? We're all of our brains have been wired to this function to survive. And so it often drives our decisions in suboptimal ways.
There's a page on Instagram, and I talk about this a lot. I love this page. I love it and hate it because it's terrifying. It's called Nature is Brutal. And it's just like, Nat Geo on steroids. It's showing all of the crazy stuff, and it's like, you nailed it. Like, the simplest things, I just imagine like the British voice. The springbok walks down to the water to drink, and then bam, Croc just snatches it up, and you're like, whoa, whoa, and it's like, and it's oh well, it's a springbok. Oh, it's a gazelle. Well, there's like, they have one video where it was a monkey. And it was like, a big baboon that got pulled in by a croc. And I was just like, and as it's getting pulled under, I was like, that could be me,
Yeah.
But my point being, there was like, I see people, Florida videos all the time. I mean, I have a weird subgroup of videos that get into my feed all the time, but people trying to pick up crocodiles and alligators is something that seems to pop in there, and I do not know why. But I built that feed brick by brick. But when you see these things, it just reminds you that it is so subconscious and it is so deeply wired. And you're right, there's so little that we can do to catch ourselves. I with my daughter and my wife will try to, there was a great book about this called The Buddha's Brain. And it's not about money, but it's about how our brain is wired. It has nothing to do with religion. The book is fascinating. What it is, it's a book on neuroscience and how the early Buddhism understood our brains, and that the stimulus for avoidance is much, 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 much larger than the stimulus for pleasure. Because, your ancestor was walking down a little, path in the jungle. It avoids the T-Rex, yay, you get to live another day, but, you're not able to mate. Well, that's not a big deal. Like, certainly you'll probably have another chance, but with the T-Rex, that was a huge deal, you didn't get eaten today,
Yeah.
So it really is so deeply wired into us. And that's what this book talks about. One of the things that the book talks about is really working with people to kind of anchor back in the present. And their big thing, the book's big thing is mindfulness meditation, just kind of being mindful and trying to come back in and look at this stuff. And, it's interesting though, because people have a lot of tools that they use to avoid, and, especially, with money avoidance is a very big, very real thing for many people.
Totally.
If someone's been avoiding their finances, ignoring it, ignoring anything, it could be ignoring bills, ignoring debt, ignoring planning, they're afraid of everything. How can they start to reconnect in a way that's not overwhelming?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to mention or add to something you said a second ago, then I'll come back to that. So you mentioned that the stimulus for pain being larger than the stimulus for positive reward. So the way that we've framed that or taken that and put it into modern day context under the field of behavioral finance is it's called prospect theory. It's also considered loss aversion. So the simple premise of it is that we avoid pain twice as much as we seek gain, or the pain of loss is much greater than the pleasure of gain. And so we tend to naturally lean towards decision making that avoids pain rather than seeks gain. And that's not necessarily good or bad, right or wrong. It's just a matter of knowing that that's the case. So they do these studies where they say, hey, if we give you $100, would you say, hey, flip a coin. If it lands on heads, you get 100. If it lands on tails, you lose 100. Most people say no. I don't want to take the risk of losing 100 to get 100. The thought of losing is too painful. So then they go, okay, they try to figure out what amount would make it worth it to be able to risk losing 100. Logically, mathematically, put it in a calculator, put it on a spreadsheet, talk to your math friends. It should be even, right? It should be, hey, I'm willing to lose 100 to gain 100. That's pretty fair. That's logically how it should be. But what we find is that people say, in order to risk losing 100, I need to have the upside of $200. So in other words, I need to at least have double the upside to make it worth taking this risk, because the pain of losing is greater than the gain of winning. It's almost twice as much. So I need twice as much of the upside. Just to your point around the neuroscience in the brain, we know this when it comes to financial decision making, and it bears itself out when you look at potentially, should I take a different job? That's not even directly related to finances, although it kind of is, right? Because we're talking, income, and that's a big component of your finances. But should I take this job? And it's well, I get a little bit nervous and afraid of all the uncertainty, and so I don't know if I'm gonna do it for something that would be the same level of pay. Or we evaluate certain things, and if the pain is too high, we'll avoid it. And that's again not necessarily a good or bad thing. It just has ramifications that are important to be aware of. So I was going to point that out. But back to your question, you said if you have a tendency to be avoidant, really in anything, but specifically with money, what are some things to do? So I was kind of laughing over here as you said that, because a few years ago in my life, it was pointed out to me that I'm a very avoidant person, particularly in relationships and conversations. I don't like conflict, but what you find is that tends to manifest itself in a lot of different areas of life. It's not a blanket statement, but if you avoid one thing, you're more likely to avoid others. So my wife's a therapist, so this is kind of how I find all this stuff out. And oftentimes it comes from you've been taught this, or you've learned it through oftentimes people closest to you growing up, friends and mostly family. And so there's no like the best way to get better at it or to figure out like, hey, how do I address this and overcome it? I mean, and I have no skin in the game here, but the best way to do it is to go to therapy. Like these therapists are highly skilled and trained in helping you. It can be a long journey to overcome this like belief system, and is ultimately what it is. There's beliefs that are underlying the behavior. So that's the best way to do it. But if you're sitting there going, okay, like I'll do that, but I'm going to find, just give me a few quick ideas in the meantime. Two things I always think about are, number one is it always starts with awareness, like awareness of the feeling when you're wanting to avoid. So for example, and hang on, you said mindfulness, right? So mindfulness and awareness are probably a little bit different, but they're at least cousins in a way where you're going, hey, I'm at least trying to be mindful and intentional and aware of what's going on in my current environment, in my current, what are my current feelings? What's the current environment? Why is this happening? So number one is just being mindful, being aware, saying, I recognize what's happening right now. So if, let's say when it comes to money, you're supposed to be, you're letting your financial situation kind of wither away because you're so afraid to confront it that you don't actually check and figure out where your money's going. You don't actually have a plan set up to make sure that you've got the safety net that you need. You don't actually have a plan to grow your wealth over time because it's just intimidating and you don't want to deal with it. Well, it's important to sit there and go, okay, when I'm supposed to be doing that, what am I feeling? What's going on? Why is this? What's that feeling that I have? Like, so usually like, oh, my heart's racing. I feel uncomfortable. And then just kind of sit with it and ask why, like, what's going on here? Why is it that I want to avoid it? And it's like, oh, I'm afraid to face the reality that I'm probably not doing as well as I should be doing. I'm afraid to bring it up because I don't want to know if things aren't going the way that they're supposed to. I have a fear of failure, for example. So just sitting there and assessing, going, okay, here's what I'm feeling right now. And then trying to get honest with yourself and ask, why am I feeling it? That's at the root of it. I mean, that's ultimately where it starts. That's also like what, a well-trained therapist would do with you is figure out what that is, because it has to start there. However, if we want to say, all right, let's go a little bit more practical, a little bit more tactical, and you're going, how can I get myself to get over this hump and stop avoiding and start doing? I mean, almost universally when it comes to helping somebody change their behavior or helping them do something that they don't want to do, I think it comes down to two things. Number one is improving clarity on what to do next. And then number two is taking small steps, because small steps create big momentum. When I say clarity, what I mean is not saying, oh, I need to work on my finances tonight. I need to take a look at my money tonight. It's like, no, what's the one next smallest step you can take to improve your situation? So it might be, clarity isn't just, oh, vaguely, I'm going to work on my money. Clarity might be, I'm going to open my budget and figure out what I have coming in for this next month and what I have going out. Clarity might be, I'm going to I'm going to pull up my investment account and look at look at what my value is as of today. I mean, whatever it is for you, it's just getting clear on exactly what you're going to do, not leaving it vague, and then keeping it as small as possible. Right? Like I think we tend to think like, oh, if I'm going to do something, it needs to be big. No. Don't do that. You'll never do it. It almost needs to be. There's this book called All It Takes Is a Goal by a guy named John Acuff. He does a lot of goal research. And he says with anything that you're wanting to do and trying to do, your very first step should almost be a goal that's so small that if you told it to somebody, they would laugh and be like, no, that can't be serious. So James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, he says like, hey, don't set a goal to go run today, to run a mile. Don't, at least at the beginning, by the way, don't set a goal to run a marathon. Make your goal to step outside and put your shoes on.
Yes.
And then you do that. Okay, great. You don't have to keep going that day, but if you're out there with your shoes on, you probably will. Right. But if you don't, that's fine. Then your goal the next day be, you get outside with your shoes on and walk half a mile. And then basically you start building confidence, building momentum by taking these small steps what also happens subconsciously, what these behavior change experts know, is that it also starts reshaping your identity. So you start becoming somebody who wakes up early to go out and get exercise. And identity is also a big piece of being able to change your behavior. So anyways, so number one would be on the practical ideas is number one is just approach it with clarity. Clarity is key to knowing exactly, don't make it vague, make it clear. Here's exactly what I'm going to do. And then number two is make that clear step, something that's really small, and let that small win give you the dopamine hit that you need to create bigger momentum down the road.
I love that. And that was why I was talking to someone about the debt. Was it the debt snowball? Like where you start paying off these smaller debts.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And you start like, wow, I can do this. I'm making progress. This is awesome.
That's right. Yep.
And it's fun because it's awesome because you're actually doing something. And I was talking to someone recently about like they were working on their debt pay down. And when they started talking about going at it, they were like, it just feels absolutely impossible to overcome this thing that I've been carrying for all these years. And it was interesting because there was an identity like, oh yeah, I've got bad credit. That was part of their identity. And it was like, and I remember we were talking and I said, well, what if it doesn't have to be part of your identity? What if you are the guy who's got things together, who's got this other stuff? And he's like, well, I've never been there and it's going to be strange for me. And I was like, but wouldn't it feel a lot better if you, and then he was like agreeing and he started in on it. But it was interesting because there was this wall that he had to kind of push through. And it was like the person who says, I'm not the fit guy. I'm not the guy that goes to the gym. Well, maybe you are. Maybe you are the guy that goes to the gym, but you just have to wake up and show up and get to the gym. And then you're suddenly the guy that's at the gym,
Right.
And I know it can be intimidating, but so is going to the doctor because you didn't take care of yourself, so is everything else, and I think that the idea is it's really about, at the end of the day, what we're talking about is a relationship with money. It's a relationship with this thing that, we're talking in wellness, it could be a relationship with your body. It's a relationship, whenever you want something to be better, you just need to like you said, it's really about experience. What was it? Mindfulness, but just being having awareness. I was watching another fun video online, and this was, they have these.
I need to hack into your account so I can figure out how you get all these good videos. But go ahead.
They're great. Friends who send ridiculous things. But I had this one video of this guy, and the dude was wearing disappearing shorts. And his wife had given him these shorts that are dissolving shorts, a swimming suit that you wear it for 15 minutes. And after 15 minutes, the whole thing dissolves.
But he doesn't know this when she gives them to him, right?
Idea.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay.
Dude gets in the pool. He's got his new trunks on. And then the thing is like after a couple of minutes, he's like, what's happening here? And it's kind of like that. Sometimes you have to bring awareness to something. You're wearing these trunks and you're not aware that these are dissolving trunks, but there's a certain moment where you suddenly become very, very aware of your situation, Right. And the thing is one of the things that always happens in these videos, because there's a bunch of people that do this prank on their spouse, which I would never do this to my spouse because I don't want to die. But I could see my wife doing this to me. So the thing is though, as you see these people that wear it, there's a moment where almost always these people start to get a hit, like an awareness of, what, something's not right. And they often will just not pay attention to it. They ignore it, or they're like, whatever, I'm in the pool, I'm in Vegas, or wherever they're at. But then a second later, they're just like, the awareness, there's no longer an ability to ignore the challenge. And I love like that you were talking about this, because anything that you're so often we do avoid things and we don't pay attention to them. And as you were talking about awareness, that just got me thinking about that. But, I love the fact that I was watching a video about this guy, and he was quite big. And the video followed his journey of getting back in shape. And one of the things that he said in the video was when he started out with this, he was not planning to run marathons. He wasn't planning to go out and do this. His goal was literally to step in front of his house and walk up and down the block. And that was it, and one block, not even a block. When he first started, it was out to like the mailbox and back, because he was a really big guy. And then the mailbox and back became something bigger, and it became bigger. But it was a journey of 1,000 steps, or 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You just got to get started. Yeah. And I love that, I was in my call last night with my financial advisor, my financial planner. And I said, I have this awareness that, if you ever get a chance, anybody who ever has a chance to go visit Rome and see the Colosseum, to see the aqueducts, to see these amazing things that were built by the Romans without modern technology, and realize these are such insane accomplishments. How did they do this? Over a long time.
Yeah.
Because they had time, step by step.
Yeah. It reminds me of a quote that I heard. I don't know if it's an official quote, but the way it was framed was like, the phrase is out there that Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yep.
Right. So we all go, oh yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day. It's like, yeah, I think the way it was phrased is like, Rome wasn't built in a day, but they were building every day. So to get there, they wasn't built in one day, but yes, they built every day. And so that's how they were able to do that, because they made steps, they made strides every single day. And I think back to the example of like the guy he went to, his goal was to walk to the mailbox every day, right? He said, wait, the journey starts with...
the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
With a single step, right? So here's why that's effective. And we sit here and we go, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's like, I can do that. Like, why are we complicating this? So in other words, we get it. Yet I would imagine that everybody listening would say like, yeah, there's still an area in my life where I need to apply that. In other words, we know what to do, but the problem is not knowing what to do. It's actually doing it. It's not an information problem. It's an execution problem. And so the issue there is we hear that, and it almost in our brains feels like, no, that's too easy. It must be harder. Like in order to justify me doing it, like it needs to be harder. So imagine you say like, hey, you know what, Brendan, I want to grow my wealth to have $1 million saved up one day. And I go, okay, great idea. All right, start by saving $1 a day and put it in this one index fund that you never look at. You'd be like, even though there's a plan and I know that it could work, you would go, yeah, your brain is sitting there going, no, that's too simple. I need more complex. I need complexity to make it feel like I can actually get there. Our brain doesn't connect simple with massive results the way that it should. And so another way you see this play out for anybody that's kind of like trying to think through this or think it through is when we think about losing weight. All right. So you sit there and you go, all right, here, how do you lose weight? How do you get in shape? Let's say you want to get in shape in some way, shape, or form. Well, I remember I was sitting when this idea was like really percolating in my mind and everything. I remember I'm sitting at our house, and on our coffee table is this 94-page magazine, and the title is How to Lose Weight and Get in Shape. I think it was like in 20 whatever year it was. And I remember picking it up and going, why are we writing 90 some pages on how to lose weight and get in shape? Because at the end of the day, it's not hard. We all know how. You eat less, you eat healthier, and you work out more. And for some reason, we're writing 94 pages or 96 pages, 94, 96 pages on how to do it. And it's because our brains just can't sit we don't sit well with the idea of simplicity being able to create the outcomes that we want. We feel like we need something more. It's like, okay, yes, I hear that, but should I like do intermittent fasting, or should I go on the Mediterranean diet? Should I do this kettlebell workout, or should I go do CrossFit? And it's like, hang on. All these are just distractions keeping you from the ultimate goal. But we always want to take what's pretty simple process and make it more complex, because it feels like simple just isn't good enough.
Yeah. So true. I was loving that you went into the different workouts too, because it was like, I was talking to someone and they were like, oh yeah, this new workout routine, this new thing, you've got to have all these. I've got to have the gym with the most different things. And it's like, I remember seeing these videos and photos of people that were like turn of the century, like really in shape. And the dude had like a basic dumbbell, and he's like, that was it,
Yeah.
and body weight and a basic dumbbell and doing some calisthenics, and like pull up bar. That was it, man. And dude was ripped, know?
That's right. The best workout, and this, like, I'm going to frame it in terms of health, right? But the best workout method, the best workout approach is the one that you'll stick to and do continuously over time. The best diet is the one that you can stick to and do over time. And we see this in so many areas. It's like, we think of it as the silver bullet. Hey, what's the silver bullet? What's the thing that's going to get me to like actually do what I'm supposed to do? And I always joke and say, like, well, first of all, everybody says there is no silver bullet. I actually kind of think that there is a silver bullet. The silver bullet is just consistency and commitment. Like, if you can do anything you want if you'll stick to it long enough. And so when you're like, all right, which workout should I get into? Well, you should do the one that you can do the longest, where you look up 5 years from now and you haven't missed a day, or maybe you do, you probably missed a day, right? But you're still going and enjoy going. So why does CrossFit work? It's not because of I get that they probably have their physiological reasons and physical reasons as to why they do what they do. At the core of it, though, is they've created this like cult nature where, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but they create this like powerful group dynamic cult nature, where it keeps people coming back because they're doing it to be a part of the group, and they just so happen to be getting exercise. So they get people to stick to it by creating this group, and they leverage social forces to do it. Doesn't mean it's the best workout, but if it's the one that gets you to stick to it, then it is for you.
100%. And that community, and this is something that I am really starting to look at in surrounding yourself with the right people. I've been working really hard, and it was awesome. Like, one of the best things that I was able to do is in 2023, 2024, I did my MBA, and it was an okay program. It wasn't a fancy one. It was a really basic. One of my classmates that I really connected with was a VP at Fidelity. And, she was part of my capstone, and just such an awesome person. And she was so great, and such just like, we had someone that was just an absolute slacker on our team. And I loved that her ability. I am not good at business language, at the ability to tell someone to get their crap together in a very, very business-like and polite way. She was a master at this. And I was just like, wow, your corporate language, like kung fu is awesome there. But it was interesting because we were talking, and just seeing her and these other people, I was just like, wow, these people are really different than what I grew up around. And not that the people I grew up around weren't. There was just a different relationship with money, a different relationship with the world. And I was just sitting there, and I started working with this other team of people. They're one of my clients. These guys are some of the smartest people I have ever met, savvy professionals, really great business people. And I just am like blown away by the way they approach things. And, you'll see that, you are a sum of the 5 people that you interact with most,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
if you're around people that pull you down, I had one guy that I have my business that is growing on content. And I had someone that I talked about, and it's going well. It's going really well right now. I had one of my friends who I talked to about what I dreamt about doing with my business that I'm doing right now for years. And every time I talked about it, he would be like, yeah, man, that's not going to work. And he'd give me 1,000 reasons that it was a bad idea. It's working now. And I just had to sit there and go, you know what? That guy is not good for me to be around. And I'm not hating on him as a person, but just he wasn't a good influence on me. And, hopefully he can figure his stuff out. But, at some point in time, you got to surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's exactly right. If you think of it, something that you want to accomplish or achieve. So whether it be in any domain, whether it be financially, whether it be health, whether it be in business, whether it be in your like as a spouse or as a parent, think about how you want to be better in those domains. Find somebody that's doing it or doing it well, hang out with them, and you're naturally going to raise your game. Right. It's like to your point, it's going to be, being around people that believe the same thing, focus on the same thing. I shouldn't say believe the same thing. Being around people that can encourage you and empower you.
Have similar values.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to put it. Yeah. That are doing the thing that you want to do. It's naturally going to raise your bar. The reason I hesitate to say that believe what you believe is because I think you have to be careful to create an echo chamber of yes men and women, right? Where you're like, I surround myself with these people because they agree with everything that I say, make me feel good about it, praise me and tell me how great and how brilliant I am. And of course that feels good to anybody, right? But you're probably not really pushing and challenging yourself if you're surrounded by people that just tell you how great you are.
Right. 100%, man. It doesn't always work. Well, I want to ask you this question. For people that think they're bad with money, what would you say to them? What advice would you give them?
Here's what first comes to mind. I'm not sure if this is exactly how I would deliver it if I had time to craft it.
Yeah.
But the first thing that comes to mind is that you're not bad with money. That's just a belief that you've told yourself or an identity that you've created. That's the first thing I would say. So I've never met anybody that's quote unquote bad with money. There are people who, they maybe they're not where they want to be. Maybe they make some quote unquote mistakes, if you will, but even then, here's what I would say. I'm kind of processing this out loud as I say that I truly believe that there's no such thing as an irrational financial decision. Almost all financial decisions are made for a reason. Yeah. In other words, if you sit down with somebody who let's just go the classic financial mistake, which we all tend to look at and go, if I've racked up credit card debt, right?
Yeah.
But you can sit down with somebody and you can actually find out a really good reason as to why they have credit card debt. For example, now let me say, really good reason means you'll find out the underlying reason that explains why they have it. Maybe it's not a good reason, but you understand it. So for example, you find out somebody has a bunch of credit card debt and you sit down with them, you talk to them, you get to know them a little bit more, you find out what was going on, what were you using it for, blah, blah, blah. And this is actually a true story. And so you find out that it was this person who when they grew up, their parents divorced when they were young. They're in their teens. Parents went separate ways. When this person would spend time with their dad, out of guilt, the dad would basically just buy anything and everything that she wanted for her, right? So they'd basically lavish her with gifts. That was the way of saying, I'm sorry and I love you. So, and not consciously, but what she comes to find out over time is subconsciously, what does that tell her? What message does she learn from that? Oh, well, your worth and your value comes from the things that you have, the things that you, and these would be nice things, by the way. She'd be getting really high end, really nice things. And so that's where she starts staking her value. Once she's out on her own, has a job, good job, but it's not paying all the bills and then creating a discretionary income to buy all these high end things that she's used to. But guess what? She still believes that in order to feel worthy, in order to be loved, in order to be valuable, you have to have these things, because the message that she learned 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, right? And so the credit card wasn't a way to rack up credit card debt. It was a way to continue to feel worthy and loved. Now, does that make it a good decision? No. But you sit there and you go, I can understand why you would keep using it, why that decision was made, because it's much harder to believe that you're not worthy than it is to not use a credit card, right? And so nobody's bad with money, right? But we all can do things to get better. And again, it comes back to what we said earlier. And a lot of times it just starts with awareness. Here's the other thing I would say is that we create these stories in our mind that we're quote unquote bad with money. After I said you're not bad, at some point I would just want to ask, I'd say, how did you determine that? How are you assessing that? What are you basing that off of? I mean, I used to work with clients who they'd be like, I'm doing okay. I know I'm really not doing that well. I'm kind of embarrassed. And you'd look and it'd be like, they've got over $1 million stored up, like well before most people would. And you're like, how did you decide that you aren't doing well? So same thing. Somebody that says they're bad, I would just say, like, what are you doing? How are you assessing that? What are you basing that off of? Let's get to the bottom of it and figure out, is that even actually true?
Right. What advice would you like to give a younger version of yourself about finances? If you could go back in time and tell yourself some advice, what advice would you give yourself?
2 things. One is never underestimate the power of compounding. Our brains think very linearly. That's how they're programmed. We can make linear connections. It's really hard for us to fathom compounding growth in any domain, in any area over time. And so money is one of those things that the earlier you start, the earlier that it compounds, the bigger effect and impact it's going to have over time. So like, I forget what it is, but it's like over 90% of Warren Buffett's net worth, his wealth, it came after the age of 65. He started when he was 11 and it came after 65 because of compound, not because he started investing better. He didn't have bigger hits. That didn't change. It was just compounding over time. So I would say that, number one, because it applies to money and it applies to finance, but it applies to all areas of your life. So you want to do something, if you want to, let's say you want to, when it comes to marketing, business development, you start creating content. Well, there's power in compounding. If you stick to it over time, you do it long enough, you start seeing the benefits of compounding. You eat healthy over time, you're going to start feeling better, living longer, more mentally sharp, so on and so forth. That's one. Number two, that's more on the like financial aspect of it in terms of how to be financially successful. I think the other thing that I would say that I didn't know early on, that because of my career path, I think I learned, thankfully, fortunately, earlier than most. My career path, meaning like this other aspect or realm of money, is that money is not the end game. It's just simply a tool to fund the life that you want to live. Like you may think that you want more money. You don't actually, I've never met one person who actually wants more money. They just want what money can do to help them live a better life. Yes. And so all decisions should not be made to optimize for maximum wealth. They should be made to optimize to optimize your life. Now, that doesn't mean that you should go make hugely detrimental financial decisions that put you in that set you back 10 years, because that's going to create anxiety down the road that'll detract from your life. So in other words, let me put it more specifically. That doesn't mean that you go buy a house that's just way above your price range, way out of what you could even possibly do. I guess there's also, there's mechanisms in place that won't even let you do that. Let's say a car, for example. Like you don't go spend just because you're like, oh, this is making my life better, and I'm like racking up credit card debt in the process. But it's the point that not every decision needs to be made optimized for the spreadsheet to create the highest level of wealth possible. We want to think about not just the ROI on our money, but the ROI on our life, and how can you use money to fund the life that you want to live.
I love that. How can you, and I think that's kind of the theme, man. And like, that's the thing that I heard in someone that I was watching today. How can you use your money to fund the life that you want, And it's different for everyone. one person might prioritize travel. Another person might prioritize experiences. Another person might prioritize things. It's different for each of us. But
that's right.
You have to figure that out and then build a plan to support that,
Right. That's right. Yeah, that's where it goes back to kind of what it's been circling around this entire conversation is the idea of awareness, mindfulness, and then like right along that track is intention. So I always say, like, if you're going to use money to fund the life that you want to live, you have to get pretty clear on what the things are that make up the life that you want to live. Like what's truly actually important to you. And then you can direct your money. Now that's where I mentioned intention. So it's being intentional about using your money and sitting down when you're making a financial decision and weighing the trade-off, going, is this in alignment with what's truly important to me in life, or am I doing it for some other reason that's not in alignment with that? Right. So just you mentioned it. It's like you have to know what those things are in order to be intentional about how you use and spend your money in a wise way that maximizes your life.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the mic drop moment, man. Like it really is about figuring things out and using it in the wisest way to really make your life the life that you want to live. I mean, we got one shot. We got one shot, and you might as well do it the best you can. And live in a way that really, really, really is authentic for you, and, there's no right answer. There's only your answer. And, part of the journey is figuring out what it is that you want to do with this life.
Mic drop number 2.
Yes.
Double awesome. Mic drop.